Hi there, I'm David, and I'm very proud to be presenting my work with Nottingham City Council, trying to address this question of whether we can use machine learning to improve housing conditions in the city. Now, Nottingham City is a great city. I lived there myself for several years as an undergraduate physics student, and I loved every minute of it, but it isn't without its issues. It's the 8th most deprived district in the UK, and this, coupled with a rapidly growing private rental market, does mean that there is a very high risk of inadequate or possibly even dangerous housing conditions. Poor housing conditions are linked to numerous social issues. And there's actually an estimated cost to NHS England annually of around £1.4 billion associated with poor housing. Issues with housing can also result in homelessness, and investigations often uncover criminal activity and sometimes even cases of modern slavery. So this is a very serious issue, and Nottingham City Council have taken some great steps to address it. The main one is introducing this new selective licensing scheme. Now, this covers the red area shown on the map, which is around 50% of the geographical area of Nottingham, and around 87% of the private rental market is covered. And all privately rented properties in that area are now legally required to have a license to continue renting. So, problem solved. Well, maybe not quite. We have to send out advisory letters to landlords as a first step to get them all licensed. And unfortunately, for every 4 letters that we send out, we only really ever get about 1 response back that actually applies for a license. So clearly, there's going to be a need for further enforcement here. And here's the real problem. There are over 100,000 addresses in that selected licensing area, and only a very small enforcement team. So it's clearly going to take a very, very long time to get through all of these properties. And actually, it's only really realistic to expect that team to get through around 5,000 or so over the next couple of years. So where do they start? Well, many of these properties are going to be facing the issues that we've outlined already. And this enforcement team do have the expertise to, when presented with details of these properties, identify which properties are likely to be at high risk facing some of these. However, it's still unreasonable to expect them to look through and label this entire set of over 100,000 properties. So wouldn't it be great if we could get a machine learning algorithm to do that for them? But of course, the problem with that is that supervised machine learning methods require many, many thousands of labeled data points to be effective, and we just don't have that here. And also, you might think that collecting that data set would rather defeat the point of the exercise. Well, that's not necessarily the case. We used a semi-supervised method called active learning, which is a way for humans and machine learning to work together. And the way it works is that a user sits at a computer and labels properties that are presented to them based on information such as the address, information from council tax records, and Google Street View images. They label them as being high risk or low risk. Meanwhile, a machine learning algorithm is running in the background on the data which has been labeled so far. And that is using some local data such as the census information, indices of multiple deprivation, and some key metrics from council records. Now, the machine learning algorithm presents back to the user only the properties that it's most uncertain about, and that means that we can get the greatest amount of information from the smallest possible training set. So I sat with 4 of the principal housing enforcement officers for a day, labeling data. It was great, we had donuts. And at the end of that, we had a labeled data set of just over 1,000 properties. And I took that data set and I built a model which would predict the probability that each of these properties would be flagged up as high risk. We're then able to rank all of those properties by that probability. And we did some tests on the predictions on the rest of the data. And we found from those tests that over 30% of the flagged properties would be found in the first 5% of that ranked list. Now, that 5% represents that 5,000 figure that I said was reasonable to get through in a couple of years. So what does this mean in real terms? Well, if we were to sample at random, we would be expecting to find around 300 of those flag properties over that 2-year period. However, using my model, we're expecting to find around 2,000. So that's more than 6 times as many. And all of this has been achieved by labeling just 1% of the data. So in answer to the original question, yes, we can use machine learning to improve housing conditions in the city of Nottingham. And this model is about to be implemented and will begin improving the living conditions of Nottingham's most at-risk and vulnerable very soon. But this isn't a problem that's unique to Nottingham. And I think that there's a real opportunity here to roll out similar technology to other towns and cities across the UK. Because ultimately, we all deserve a safe place to live. Thank you very much.